Hello my dear friends, you're in the Military Summary channel, and today we will discuss the situation in Ukraine on the 12th of April of 2025. Today we have lots of very interesting updates, so let's start. And first we're going to talk about Kyiv, the capital of Ukraine. During the previous night, the Russians carried out massive drone attack all over the entire territory of the city of Kyiv, and according to information we have, the Russians used lots of drones. For example, in this video we can see the consequences of Russian attack. Later, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine provided this picture where we can see the results of work of Ukraine air defense. And according to official information provided us by the Ukrainian sources, at night air defense forces destroyed 56 drones out of 88 Shahed. So this is the situation. Later, the Ukrainian sources published this video, and in this video, for example, we can see how the Ukrainians were trying to bring down drones, and large-scale smoke after the strike is visible in this video. So this is battle over Kyiv. So this is the consequences of Russian attack. You can see smoke, we can see several explosions, and most likely the Russians were attacking and destroying the military facilities. And later we got additional details of what exactly the Russians were trying to destroy during the previous night. And according to information we have, the Russians attacked this, let's say, hangar. This is very important hangar, military objects that Ukrainians use to produce drones. Let's discuss this in details. The target of the attack by the Giran 2 kamikaze drones was the Svyatoshin airfield in Kyiv, namely the largest hangar of the Antonov plant. Antonov currently produces Ukrainian kamikaze drones Luty, which are the main means of destroying Russian infrastructure facilities. So this is one of the most important, let's say, military facility of Ukraine, and this facility was destroyed by the Russian attack. But the problem is, or maybe not the problem, that Ukrainians were trying to protect these facilities no matter the price they're going to pay for this. And according to information we have, the Ukrainians brought additional F-16s as close as possible to the city of Kyiv with the purpose to use F-16s as air defense systems with the purpose to destroy Russian drones. And today, more precisely this morning of the 12th of April of 2025, we got a very important statement made by the Ukrainian official authorities. And according to them, the Ukrainian Air Force reports the death of a Ukrainian F-16 pilot while on a combat mission. So based on this article and based on this official statement of Ukrainian sources, we can make a conclusion that most likely the Ukrainian F-16 that Ukrainians were trying to use as air defense was brought down by the Ukrainian air defense systems. So, or something like this, because we didn't have any information that the Russians attacked the territory of Kyiv with missiles, let's say air-to-air missiles or surface-to-air missiles with the purpose to bring down Ukrainian F-16. So we believe that that was something like friendly fire. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation on the ground, and first let's talk about the Chernihiv area. Today we got a lot of very interesting reports from this territory. The Russian Federation is probably preparing an offensive against the Chernihiv region as well as the Kharkiv and the Sumy regions. RBC Ukraine source note that the armed forces of Ukraine are transferring additional troops there for defense. And you know that was probably the only update from the Chernihiv region, but right before I started making this video, several pro-Ukrainian sources published some articles, some notes, some assigned sources from this region, from the village of by the name of Zarichna, and the Ukrainians reported that the Russians crossed this area and began advancing, let's say, in the direction of the village by the name of Khatiivka. And Ukrainian sources report that they managed to discover some concentration of Russian units exactly in this point. As for the beginning of this video, we haven't received any reliable proofs about this piece of news, so we decided to keep this information till morning until we get additional clarifications and additional information. So once again, maybe tomorrow during the next update we will adjust the map in this area in the Russian favor due to possible offensive operation from the Russian side. As for now, we're not going to adjust anything. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Sumy direction. The Russians continued their offensive operation, and today several sources reported that the Russians established control over 50% of the settlement by the name of Oleshnya. And as you can see, we have already discussed this report. We discussed this report during the previous video, and as you can see during the day, we haven't received nothing regarding changes, so which means that there are still very heavy clashes and that Ukrainians show fierce resistance. As for the settlement of Gornal, the second day in a row, the pro-Russian sources confirm Russian control and additional progress on the ground in the direction of the settlement. But as for now, we haven't received anything that can confirm the clashes on the territory of the village itself. But today we got a very interesting statement from the territory of the church. According to information we have, the Russians managed to encircle the Ukrainians in the territory of the church, and the Russians are saying that there are around 300 soldiers of the armed forces of Ukraine that were blocked on the territory of this church. So very interesting information as for now, once again, without any proofs, without any geolocation that can confirm this. Anyway, let's wait and see what is going to be next. As for now, the Russians continue bombing and attacking the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in this area. Mainly the Russians are trying to damage and destroy the concentration of forces of the 80th and 82nd Brigades of the armed forces of Ukraine. In this video, we can see multiple Iskander strikes on the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Kupiansk direction, and first let's start with the northern part. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to take several buildings under complete control in the southwestern part of the village. Furthermore, the Russians published this video. You know that the Russians have some problems in this direction, and the main problems are that the Russians can't concentrate their, let's say, heavy vehicles, armored vehicles, different equipment on the Ukrainian side of the river of Oskol. They can work here just with the use of infantry, but the Russians found a solution how to probably get initiative in their hands. The Russians began using drones in this direction massively. In this video we can see how the Russians attacked the positions of the armored forces of Ukraine on the territory of the settlement by the name of Kamenka with drone. In this video we can see how the Russians sent drone with explosive, and then we can see how the Russians destroyed temporary deployment point of the armored forces of Ukraine, which most likely didn't allow the Russians to attack further in the northern direction. So this is the situation on the ground in the northern Kupiansk area. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the southern Kupiansk direction or Liman direction and so on. As you can see, we have lots of icons, but the thing is that we have no changes on the ground. The Russians managed to reach the next defense belt, and currently the Russians are using all, let's say, weapons they have, all calibers and arms they have, with the purpose to destroy the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine. Currently there are very heavy clashes on the territory of the Serebryanka forest. In this video, for example, we can see how the Russians were bombing the territory and the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine on the territory of Kalynove forest with the use of tall flamethrower systems. And telling the truth, this is not the only video from this direction with the use of heavy artillery systems, tall flamethrower systems. If we increase the numbers of days, for example, since the beginning of April, we're gonna receive lots of videos how the Russians were bombing and attacking the positions of Ukraine forces with this heavy flamethrower system. This video we've just watched, this is another video that was published probably on the 5th of April, so several days ago, and here we can see the same situation. First the Russians attacked this territory with bomb, let's say missile, and then the Russians began bombing and attacking this territory with a significant number of missiles of this flamethrower system. Several days ago we got another video almost from the same direction, carried out by the same squad. In this video we can see how the Russians using tall flamethrower systems were bombing and attacking the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine along Seversky Donetsk River. So we see that the Russians concentrated very heavy artillery forces in this direction, and we see that the Russians are trying to burn out the positions of the armed forces of Ukraine in the Serebryanka forest, which means that they're planning to begin a full-scale offensive in the very near future. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Chasov Yar and Torez direction. First, let's talk about the video that was published by the Ukrainians from the outskirts of the settlement by the name of Vasyukovka. In this video published by the Ukrainian side, more precisely by the 30th Mechanized Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, we can see how the Ukrainians were bombing and attacking the Russian soldiers that were trying to break through the Ukrainian defense belt and to outflank the settlement of Vasyukovka. In this video we can see how the Ukrainians were attacking the Russians exactly in this point. The Russians were trying to outflank the city of Vasyukovka and to attack the settlement from the south and from the southwest, but most likely the Russian plans were discovered and the Russians were forced to fall back. This is a very important video because several days ago, several neutral mappers adjusted the map around Vasyukovka back in the Ukraine favor, as if the Russians haven't managed to dig in deeper and to save control over this territory. But now we got another geolocation, another proof that confirm Russian control over this territory and that the Russians continue offensive operation with the purpose to take this small settlement under complete control. As for the Chasiv Yar direction, we have, as usually, lots of icons from this area. The Russians were bombing and attacking the positions of the armored forces of Ukraine with a significant number of drones. The Russians were trying to destroy vehicles, tanks, equipment that Ukrainians are sending more and more in the direction of the city of Chasiv Yar with the purpose to unblock the Ukrainians that currently were captured by the Russians, more precisely encircled on the territory of this citadel. And according to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to take several blocks on the territory of this citadel. Furthermore, the Ukrainians counterattacked and restored control over some positions to the south of the city of Chasiv Yar, taking under control one of the most important positions that allowed the Ukrainians to control the logistic road N32 that goes from the city of Chasiv Yar to the city of Bakhmut. So a very important part of this road was restored by the Ukrainians, as you can see. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation about probably the most important direction, the Konstantinovka direction, where the Russians continue their offensive operation, starting from the settlement of Grodovka and ending by the settlement of Toretsk. So what happened during the previous 24 hours? First of all, when talking about the city of Toretsk, we still haven't received anything about the Russian breakthrough from the city of Toretsk towards the settlement of Nilipovka. Most likely the Russians established complete control over this territory, and the Russians still continue attack the Ukrainian positions on the territory of this mine, which most likely is also under complete Ukrainian control. So the situation here is very complicated, and as we understand, currently there are just clashes for the initiative. Both the Russians and the Ukrainians are trying to get the initiative in their hands, and this battle will determine a lot. Furthermore, the Russians continue advancing in the area and in the pockets along Seversky Donetsk-Donbass Canal and along 0519 road. Today, the Ukrainian sources published this video where we can see another convoy of the armored forces of Ukraine that was bombed by the Ukrainians from the 28th Mechanized Brigade of the Armored Forces of Ukraine. So here we can see just three vehicles, one tank with the clearing equipment, and several infantry fighting vehicles, most likely with Marines on board. The Ukrainians attacked them, the Russians landed and most likely captured tree lines in the vicinity of this territory. So based on this video published by the Ukrainian side, we have adjusted the map. But I'll remind you that during the previous days we got lots of updates that confirmed Russian progress and Russian attacks in this direction. We see that the Russians continue their offensive. As for now, the Russians are trying to take under control this intersection of tree lines, to dig in deeper, to take under control the village of Delivka, and then to move further in the northern direction. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation probably from the most active direction. We are talking about the Kliban-Bytskaya direction as a part of Konstantinovka direction. First, let's take a look at the map. We have a lot of icons with flags, and let's compare the map between the dates. For example, this is the situation by the end of the 11th of April of 2025. The Russians just established control over around 50% of the settlement of Kalynove, and this is the situation by the end of the 12th of April. As you can see, according to these, let's say, all these updates, the Russians established complete control over this territory. And this information was confirmed by many resources, by neutral mappers, first of all, by pro-Ukrainian sources. This information was confirmed, and very interesting that this information and this breakthrough was confirmed by pro-Russian resources, and pro-Russian resources also published this video. In this video, for example, we can see how some Russian soldier established some sign of Russian unit that was, let's say, assaulting attack in this village. And this author of this video reported that the flag was established on the territory of the settlement of Kalynove. you know that when talking about this video, I can't tell you that it is possible to geolocate this video based on this quality and so on. So as for now, before we started making this video, we added this video softly. We added this video softly in the northern part of the settlement because the author reported that the village of Kalynove was taken by the Russians. And telling the truth, probably a minute before I started and I pressed the button record, we got geolocation, and this video with the Russian flag was geolocated, let's say in the southeastern part of the settlement, so somewhere here, so from this part. So obviously this video doesn't show us that the entire settlement was captured. We believe that it's too early to color the entire village in the Russian favor, but before the next morning update we will adjust at least the eastern part almost to the territory of Kiram and Novokalynova. So we will have some adjustment. Maybe tomorrow the Minister of Defense will confirm this information. Anyway, as for now, it doesn't matter. The most important is that the Russians continue offensive, and according to different sources, several Russian sabotage and reconnaissance groups managed to answer the village of Stara Mykolaiv and Gnavtovka. So the clashes currently are taking place much further in the northern direction in the next settlements. So this is very important situation because based on all these reports and summarizing everything that we've just discussed, the front line, the defense of the armored forces of Ukraine in the Kliban-Bytska water reservoir direction collapsed completely, and the Ukrainians most likely will not be able to stabilize the situation. Most likely, the Ukrainians will continue falling back further and further in the northern direction, and most likely the Ukrainians will try to stabilize the situation along the settlements of Yablunovka, Alexandra Kalynova, because these two settlements are located between two water reservoirs, the Kliban-Bytska water reservoir and this small lake. This is more or less reliable position where the Ukrainians will try to slow down the Russians. Also, there is a river, but we see that Ukrainians will be forced to rely their defense on the natural barriers, not on the barriers that were created by their engineering forces. So we see the situation is very difficult. Furthermore, we continue receiving lots of updates from the settlement of Tarasovka. During the previous 24 hours, the Russians published additional video where we can see lots of episodes how the Russians were bombing and attacking the vehicles of the armored forces of Ukraine, that they were trying to evacuate, to bring additional forces and so on. So we see that the Russians over-concentrated on this territory, and we believe that during the next several days, this settlement would be completely cleared by the Russians. And for example, this is the picture since the beginning of April. Lots of icons, lots of geolocations. The Russians destroyed almost everything that entered this territory. For example, in this video we can see how the Ukrainians were trying to return back with tank after the tank was empty, but the tank was damaged and destroyed by the Russian FPV drone. So we see that the situation for the Ukrainians in these directions is also very critical. The Russians are trying to advance something like this. Furthermore, we have some changes on the ground. Today, Ukrainian sources published this video in the vicinity of the settlement by the name of Yelizavetovka. And in this video, we can see a huge Russian convoy and the huge number of Russian infantry that were attacking the Ukrainian positions in the vicinity of Mirolyubovka. So this is very interesting offensive operation. And this video was published by the 46th Air Mobile Brigade of the Armored Forces of Ukraine. As you can see, according to this video, there were very heavy clashes. And based on this video, we have adjusted this territory. So once again, this is, for example, the situation by the end of the 11th of April of 2025, and this is by the end of the 12th of April. So as you can see, based on this video, we have adjusted the contested area. So we believe that the Russians were trying to attack Mirolyubovka, and most likely the Russians maybe had plans to continue further attack towards Novoekonomichna. And of course, if the Russians were able to break through the Ukrainian positions in this area, this could lead to complete collapse of Ukrainian positions, and the city of Pokrovsk and Mirnograd and the Pokrovsk agglomeration would be caught in cauldron, or at least would be caught in pincers from the west and from the south. So we believe that the Russians, due to, let's say, Russian activization in this area, will continue offensive operation until they take under control all these settlements: Mykolaiivka, Malinovka, Mirna, Yelizavetovka, and of course this settlement by the name of Mykolaiivka and Ekonomichne. Now let's move further and let's discuss the situation in the Novopavlovka direction. As you can see from this area, we also received lots of icons. The Russians continue offensive, and during the previous 24 hours, the Russians managed to improve their positions on the Novopavlovka direction. The Russians entered the settlement of Troitska. Up to 30% is already under complete Russian control. The clashes continues. The Ukrainians can't stabilize the situation. Furthermore, the Russians continue advancing from the settlement of Sribny in the direction of Alexeyevka, trying to outflank the settlement from the north and from the northwest. We have additional changes on the ground, as you can see. The Russians continue offensive operation from the settlements of Razdolne and Novocheritovaty Dnieproenergia in the northern direction, and as a result of offensive, the Russians managed to improve their positions and to shorten the distance to the settlements of Otradne and the settlement of Bogatyr. This is the situation by the end of the 11th of April, and this is the situation by the end of the 12th of April. The Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense belt, and tomorrow we believe we're going to receive additional changes. As for the Shevchenko direction, the Russians continue concentration of their forces, but as for now, as for the end of the 12th of April, without any attempts to attack the settlement itself. So the main reason of this is that Ukrainians bombing and attacking the Russian position with cluster rounds, so that's why the Russians can't concentrate the critical mass. But it's just probably a matter of time when the Russians concentrate critical mass, and then they will begin offensive. So as you can see, the Russians started their major battle, major offensive operation from the Novopavlovka directions towards the city of Konstantinovka. We see this at some positions, at some points, the Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense belt, and which can lead probably even to complete collapse of Ukrainian positions as well. And that's it for today. Military Summary channel reminds we condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for your watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.